The Grand Assembly Hall stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive space, their voices creating a constant hum of conversation. Some had scales, others had fur, and many looked nothing like anything found on Earth. They all waited for the same thing. Today, the Galactic Council would decide if humanity could join them. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all. His blue uniform looked plain compared to the colorful robes and armor worn by the alien representatives. Next to him, diplomat Lauren Hayes held a datapad with shaking hands. They had prepared for this moment for months, but now that it was here, the weight of it pressed down on both of them. "All members, please take your seats," a voice boomed through the hall. The speaker was a Xanthari, a tall being with silver skin that seemed to glow under the lights. His name was Council Leader Theron, and his 4 eyes swept across the room with authority. "We gather today to vote on the petition submitted by the species known as humans. They request membership in our council." Jake took a deep breath. 50 years had passed since humans first made contact with alien life. In that time, Earth had followed every rule the council set. Human traders had been honest in their dealings. Human scientists had shared their discoveries freely. Human diplomats had built friendships across dozens of worlds. Everything had been done correctly. Everything should work in their favor. "Captain Morrison," Theron said, gesturing toward Jake, "please present your species case." Jake stepped forward. The lights focused on him, making it hard to see the crowd beyond. He could feel thousands of eyes on him, studying him, judging him. "Honored members of the council," Jake began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Humanity comes before you today with respect and hope. For 50 years we have worked alongside your people. We have traded fairly. We have shared knowledge. We have proven that we can be trusted." He paused, looking around the room. Some faces seemed interested. Others looked bored. A few appeared hostile. "Earth has much to offer the council," Jake continued. "Our scientists have made breakthroughs in medical technology that could help billions. Our engineers have designed ships that travel faster and use less fuel. Our artists have created works that inspire people across multiple worlds. We want to share all of this as full members of your community." Lauren stepped forward next. Her voice was softer than Jake's, but just as determined. "We know that humanity is young compared to most species here. We know we have made mistakes in our past, but we have learned from those mistakes. We have grown. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves as equals among the stars." When they finished, the hall fell silent. Then the questions began. A representative from the Kelron species stood up. She had bright green skin and spoke in a musical voice. "Your species has a violent history. You have fought wars among yourselves for thousands of years. How can we trust you will not bring that violence to the council?" Jake had expected this question. "It is true that humans have fought wars, but those wars taught us the value of peace. We created the United Earth government specifically to prevent future conflicts. For 200 years, Earth has known peace among its own people. But you still maintain military forces," another voice called out. This one belonged to a being covered in feathers. "Why do you need weapons if you claim to be peaceful?" "We maintain defense forces," Lauren explained. "Not for conquest, but for protection. The galaxy is vast, and not all dangers come from other intelligent species. Pirates exist. Natural disasters happen. We want to be prepared to help, not to harm." The questions continued for an hour. Some were fair, asking about human culture and technology. Others felt like attacks, focusing on Earth's worst moments. Through it all, Jake and Lauren answered honestly, never trying to hide the truth about humanity's past. Finally, Theron raised his hand for silence. "The questioning period is complete. We will now hear arguments from council members before the vote." A Xanthari ambassador stood up. He was shorter than Theron but carried himself with equal confidence. "I must speak against this petition," he said firmly. "Humanity comes from what they call a death world. Their planet has extreme weather, dangerous animals, and deadly diseases. They evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most of us. This has made them aggressive and unpredictable. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Jake felt his heart sink. They advanced too quickly. The Zenthari continued. In just a few centuries, they went from basic flight to traveling between stars. This speed concerns me. What will they become in another century? Another 1,000 years? Can we risk allowing such an aggressive, fast-growing species into our council? Other voices joined in supporting the Zenthari's position. They spoke of fear and caution. They talked about protecting the peace that the council had maintained for thousands of years. They argued that humanity was simply too dangerous, too different, too unknown. A few voices spoke in favor of humanity. A trader from the Morvian species praised human honesty in business. A scientist from Kelros mentioned productive research partnerships. But these voices were few and quiet compared to the opposition. Theron called for the vote. The hall filled with light as each member cast their decision through their personal terminals. The lights represented votes, red for rejection, blue for acceptance. Jake watched as the hall flooded with red light. Here and there, a few blue lights appeared, but they were overwhelmed by the sea of red surrounding them. The vote is complete, Theron announced. His voice held no emotion. By a count of 187 to 13, the council has rejected humanity's petition for membership. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Lauren's face went pale. 50 years of work, of friendship, of cooperation, all dismissed in a single vote. Furthermore, Theron continued, the council requests that humanity withdraw from all council territories within 6 months. This includes trading posts, research stations, and diplomatic offices. Earth will be welcome to reapply for membership in no less than 100 years, provided they can demonstrate significant cultural development. Jake wanted to argue, to demand an explanation to make them understand, but he could see it was useless. The decision was made. The galaxy had spoken. Humanity was not welcome. He and Lauren gathered their materials in silence. As they walked out of the hall, none of the aliens met their eyes. Some looked guilty. Others looked relieved. Most simply ignored them, already moving on to other business. On the shuttle back to their ship, Lauren finally spoke. What do we tell Earth? Jake stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out, there was home, a planet full of people waiting for good news that would never come. We tell them the truth, he said quietly. The galaxy doesn't want us, so we'll go home and figure out what comes next. Neither of them could know that this rejection would one day save the very civilizations that had turned them away. Neither could imagine that humanity's absence would nearly destroy the galaxy. They only knew that Earth had been judged and found wanting, dismissed by beings who feared what they did not understand. The shuttle carried them away from the council station, beginning humanity's long journey back to isolation. Behind them, the council continued their meetings, confident in their decision. They had protected themselves from a dangerous species. They had maintained their peaceful society. They had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since the vote. Earth had done exactly what the council requested. Every human trading post in council space had closed its doors. Research teams working with alien scientists had packed their equipment and gone home. The embassy on the council station, once bustling with activity, now stood empty and dark. The galaxy barely noticed. Life continued as it always had for the council species. They traded, they explored, they lived in the peace they had maintained for thousands of years. A few individuals missed their human friends, but most simply forgot that Earth had ever asked to join them. On the council station, Theron reviewed reports in his private office. The Zenthari leader felt satisfied with how smoothly the human withdrawal had proceeded. There had been no protests, no anger, no problems. Humanity had simply left, proving they could follow rules even when disappointed. A message alert interrupted his thoughts. Theron opened the communication expecting routine business. Instead, he found an urgent report from the Outer Rim territories. 3 colonies had missed their scheduled check-ins. The message was marked as low priority. Missing check-ins happen sometimes due to communication errors or equipment failures. Theron filed the report away and returned to his work. It was not worth worrying about. 2 weeks later, more reports arrived. 5 more colonies had gone silent. The last transmission from one of them mentioned strange ships in their system. The message cut off abruptly, and all attempts to re-establish contact had failed. This time, Theron paid attention. He called a meeting of the Council's Security Committee. Representatives from a dozen species gathered in a small conference room, their faces showing varying levels of concern. "We have lost contact with 8 colonies in the Outer Rim," Theron explained, displaying a star map. Red markers showed the silent colonies, forming a rough line across the edge of Council space. The distances between them suggest this is not a coincidence. "Pirates?" suggested a Kelron representative. Her name was Vesa, and she commanded one of the Council's patrol fleets. "The Outer Rim has always attracted criminals. Pirates do not have the resources to attack multiple colonies," Theron replied. "And they would demand ransoms, not simply disappear with their targets." "Perhaps a natural phenomenon," offered another member. "A radiation storm or spatial anomaly could disrupt communications across a wide area." Theron did not believe that explanation, but he had no better one. The Council had not faced a serious military threat in over 3,000 years. The idea that someone might be attacking them seemed impossible. "Send a patrol to investigate," Theron ordered. 3 ships should be sufficient. If there is a problem, they can handle it or call for support. Vesa dispatched the patrol immediately. The 3 Council ships were beautiful vessels, designed more for exploration than combat. Their weapons existed mainly for clearing asteroid debris or defending against the occasional pirate. The crews were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. The patrol reached the first silent colony 4 days later. What they found turned confusion into horror. The colony was gone. Not destroyed, but harvested. Every building had been stripped of useful materials. The population of 15,000 had vanished without a trace. Scorch marks on the ground suggested a battle, but there were no bodies, no survivors, no clues about who had done this. Before the patrol could investigate further, their sensors detected incoming ships. Dozens of vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel, surrounding the Council patrol. These ships looked brutal and efficient, all sharp angles and heavy weapons. They broadcast no greetings, no demands, no communications at all. They simply opened fire. The Council ships tried to defend themselves, but they were completely outmatched. Their shields fell within seconds. Their weapons barely scratched the enemy hulls. One ship was destroyed immediately. The second was disabled and boarded, its crew taken prisoner. Only the 3rd ship escaped, jumping to faster-than-light speed with severe damage. The surviving ship limped back to Council space, carrying terrifying news. The Council was under attack by an unknown enemy, one far more powerful and ruthless than anything they had encountered in millennia. Theron assembled the full Council immediately. The chamber that had once seemed so grand now felt vulnerable. 200 species gathered to hear the patrol captain describe what he had witnessed. "They call themselves the Dravix," the captain reported, his voice shaking. "We picked up their internal communications during the battle. They are organized like a hive, all following the commands of their queen. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They conquer and consume." Images from the patrol's sensors displayed on screens throughout the hall. The Dravix ships were massive, built for war in a way Council vessels never had been. Their weapons used technology the Council barely understood. Their tactics showed clear military expertise. "How many ships do they have?" Vesa asked. "Our sensors detected over 300 vessels in that one system," the captain replied, "and communications suggested many more fleets operating in other areas." Panic spread through the Council chamber. 300 warships was more than the entire Council defense fleet combined. "And the Dravix had multiple fleets. We must mobilize our forces," Theron declared. "Send word to all member species. We need every available ship and crew member. This threat must be stopped before it reaches our core worlds." Over the next month, the Council assembled the largest military fleet in their history. 500 ships gathered, pulled from patrol duties, exploration missions, and orbital defenses around major worlds. It was an impressive sight, and it gave the Council hope. That hope died at the Battle of Kelros. The Council fleet met the Dravix at a strategic system that controlled access to dozens of inner colonies. The Council commanders planned to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the enemy. They arranged their ships in defensive formations based on ancient tactics that had worked in simulations for centuries. The Dravix tore, through them like they were made of paper. The enemy ships moved with aggressive precision, breaking the Council formations before they could properly form. Dravix weapons cut through shields and hulls with terrifying efficiency. When Council ships tried to retreat, the Dravix hunted them down systematically. Vesa commanded the fleet from her flagship. She watched in horror as ship after ship was destroyed. Her officers panicked, unable to understand what was happening. They had trained for ceremonies and emergencies, not actual war. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for this level of violence. "Fall back," Vesa ordered. "All ships retreat immediately." Less than half the fleet escaped. 300 ships and over 2 million crew members were lost in a single battle. The Dravix claimed the Kelros system and continued their advance. Refugees flooded into Council space, bringing stories of Dravix brutality. Entire populations were enslaved or harvested for resources. Worlds were stripped bare of anything useful. The Dravix moved like a plague, consuming everything in their path. In the Council chamber, Theron faced a room full of terrified representatives. The confident civilization that had rejected humanity 6 months ago now teetered on the edge of collapse. They had no military experience, no aggressive instincts, no understanding of how to fight a real war. The Xanthari ambassador who had spoken against humanity's petition stood up. His voice was quiet, almost defeated. "We need help," he said. "We need someone who understands combat, who evolved fighting for survival, who knows what it means to wage war." Theron understood immediately. "You mean the humans. They come from a death world. They have fought wars for thousands of years. They maintain military forces even in peace. Everything we rejected them for is exactly what we need now." Silence filled the chamber. The same beings who had voted against humanity now faced an impossible choice. They could maintain their pride and watch their civilization be destroyed, or they could ask for help from the species they had judged too dangerous and aggressive. "But they withdrew from our space," someone said. "We voted against them. They have no reason to help us." "Then we beg," Theron said firmly. "We apologize. We offer them anything they want, because if we do not, the Dravix will destroy us all." The Council voted unanimously to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. This time, there would be no debate about whether humanity was worthy. This time, the Council needed humanity far more than humanity needed them. A small ship prepared to travel to the Sol system, carrying ambassadors tasked with an impossible mission. They had to convince the species they had rejected to save the civilization that had judged them unworthy. None of them knew if humanity would even listen. The Council diplomatic ship approached Earth's solar system with caution. 3 ambassadors sat in the small vessel, each lost in their own thoughts. Theron himself had chosen to lead this mission, feeling responsible for the crisis his decisions had helped create. With him came Vesa, the Kelron military commander, and reluctantly the Xanthari ambassador who had spoken most strongly against humanity. "We are being scanned," the pilot announced. "Multiple defense platforms throughout the system. They are more heavily armed than I expected." Theron studied the sensor readings. Earth had not been idle during their 6 months of isolation. New stations orbited the outer planets. Weapon platforms guarded key positions. The number of military vessels had increased significantly. Humanity had clearly prepared for the possibility that the galaxy might become hostile. "They are hailing us," the pilot said. A human face appeared on the screen. She wore a military uniform with stars on her collar indicating high rank. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly and her eyes were sharp and calculating. "This is Admiral Danny Cole of Earth Defense Command. State your business." "I am Council Leader Theron. We request an audience with your planetary government. It is a matter of urgent importance." Danny studied them for a long moment. "You're the ones who voted us out. Took your vote 6 months ago, told us we weren't good enough, sent us packing. Now you show up asking for a meeting. Must be pretty urgent." "It is," Theron said, swallowing his pride. "The galaxy is under attack. We need help." Something flickered in Danny's eyes. Not satisfaction or smugness, but concern. "Hold position. I'll contact President Grant. She'll decide if she wants to see you." The screen went dark. The 3 ambassadors waited in tense silence. An hour passed, then 2. Theron wondered if Earth would simply refuse to meet with them. It would be understandable. The Council had rejected humanity, forced them out of their hard-won positions throughout the galaxy, and now came begging for assistance. Finally, Danny's face reappeared. The President has agreed to meet with you. You'll dock at Earth Station 1 and be transported to Geneva. Any aggressive action will result in the immediate destruction of your ship. Are we clear? Perfectly clear, Theron replied. Earth Station 1 was impressive, far larger than it had been 6 months ago. Defense turrets tracked their ship as they docked. Human security officers, armed and alert, escorted the ambassadors through corridors filled with purposeful activity. This was not the isolated, rejected species Theron had expected to find. This was a civilization that had taken its rejection and turned it into motivation. President Lisa Grant met them in a conference room overlooking Earth. She was younger than Theron expected, perhaps 50 years old by human standards, with gray-streaked brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. Admiral Cole stood beside her, along with several other military officers. "Please sit," Lisa said, gesturing to chairs designed to accommodate various alien anatomies. "You've come a long way. Let's hear what brings you to Earth after telling us to stay away from the galaxy." Theron took a deep breath. 6 months ago, the Council rejected humanity's petition. We believed we were protecting our peaceful society from a species we considered too aggressive and unpredictable. We were wrong. He explained the Dravix invasion, showing them recordings of the battles. He described the loss of colonies, the destruction of the Council fleet, the millions already dead or enslaved. As he spoke, he watched the humans' faces carefully. They showed concern but no triumph. They were not happy to see the Council suffering, despite how the Council had treated them. "The Dravix are unlike anything we have faced," Theron continued. "They are a warrior species with superior technology and tactical expertise. Our forces cannot stop them. We have lost every major engagement. In 3 months, they have conquered 40 star systems and show no signs of slowing." "And you want humanity to fight your war?" Lisa said. It was not a question. "We are asking for help," Vesa spoke up. "Our species evolved on peaceful worlds. We have no experience with real combat. We do not know how to think like warriors. But humans do. Everything we feared about your species is what we desperately need now." The Zenthari ambassador finally spoke. His voice was heavy with shame. "I led the vote against you. I called your species dangerous and aggressive. I argued that Deathworld origins made you unsuitable for civilized society. I was wrong. Those qualities we rejected are the only things that can save us now. I do not expect forgiveness, but I ask for your help anyway." Silence filled the room. Admiral Cole whispered something to President Grant. Other officers consulted datapads, likely calculating Earth's military capabilities. Theron waited, barely breathing. "Why should we help you?" Lisa finally asked. "You judged us. You rejected us. You forced us out of the galaxy. Some would say you deserve what's happening. Some would," Theron agreed. "But I have studied humanity during our months of contact. You do not let innocent people suffer because their leaders made mistakes. You have a concept you call compassion, even for those who have wronged you. We are gambling that this is true." Lisa smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "You're asking us to risk human lives to save civilizations that called us too dangerous to associate with. That's a big ask. We offer technology," Theron said quickly. "Advanced power systems, medical knowledge, access to resources throughout Council space. We will reconsider Earth's membership petition immediately." "We don't want your membership," Lisa said flatly. "Not if it comes with conditions. Not if we have to prove ourselves worthy. If Earth helps the galaxy, it will be as equals, not as applicants hoping to impress you." Theron blinked in surprise. "What do you want?" "A formal alliance," Lisa said. "Not membership in your council, but a partnership between equals. Recognition of human sovereignty over all systems we have claimed or colonized, and a guarantee that no species in this galaxy will ever again vote on whether humanity deserves a place among the stars. Take us as we are or don't take us at all." The 3 ambassadors looked at each other. This was not what they had expected. They had come offering humanity a chance to join the Council, thinking it was what Earth still wanted. Instead, humanity demanded respect and independence. "We have no authority to agree to such terms," the Zenthari ambassador said. "Then go back and get authority," Danny said. "We're not sending our people to die for civilizations that see us as second-class citizens. Either the galaxy accepts us as equals or you figure out the Dravix problem on your own." "If we return to get authorization, it could take weeks," Vesa protested. "The Dravix will not wait. More systems will fall. More people will die. That's not our fault," Lisa replied. You made your choice 6 months ago. Now we're making ours. We'll help, but only on our terms. Theron made a decision. He had come to Earth with limited authority, but sometimes leaders had to act beyond their mandate. I accept your terms on behalf of the Council. We will formalize the agreement when circumstances allow, but Earth has my word that your conditions will be met. Lisa studied him carefully, then nodded. Good. Danny, start mobilizing the fleet. I want 3 battle groups ready to deploy within 48 hours. Already done, Madam President, Danny replied. I had ships preparing the moment these 3 showed up in our system. Figured they wouldn't come all this way unless things were desperate. How many ships can you send? Vesa asked. 3 battle groups, Danny said. Roughly 150 vessels total, including support ships. It's about a third of our total military force. We're keeping the rest to defend Earth and our colonies just in case. 150 ships, the Zenthari ambassador said quietly. The Council sent 500 to Kelros and lost more than half. Our ships are built different, Danny explained. And our crews know how to fight. We've spent the last 6 months preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might need the very things you rejected us for having. Lisa stood up, signaling the meeting was ending. Earth will help you, Council Leader Theron. Not because you deserve it, but because innocent people are dying. That's what you never understood about humanity. Yes, we're aggressive. Yes, we come from a harsh world. But we also have something you dismissed. We protect those who cannot protect themselves even when they've treated us badly. Theron felt a wave of emotion. Shame, gratitude, and hope mixed together. Thank you, President Grant. I cannot express how much this means. Thank me by making sure the galaxy remembers this moment, Lisa said. Remember that when you judged humanity too dangerous, we still came to save you. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before rejecting someone because they're different. Within 2 days, the first human battle group jumped into Council space. Admiral Cole led the fleet aboard the ECS Defiant, a massive warship bristling with weapons that made even the largest Dravix vessels look vulnerable. With him came experienced crews, trained Marines, and a determination to prove that humanity's aggressive nature was exactly what the galaxy needed. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the Dravix appeared, the Council had hope. Earth had come to their rescue, bringing all the dangerous qualities that had led to their rejection. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the things you fear most are the things that save you. The Kelros system hung on the edge of collapse. 3 Council fleets had tried to hold the line against the Dravix advance, and 3 times they had been pushed back with heavy losses. Now the remaining Council ships were scattered across the system, low on ammunition and morale. The Dravix fleet prepared for a final assault that would break through to the inner colonies. Then 3 human battle groups dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and everything changed. Admiral Danny Cole stood on the bridge of the ECS Defiant studying the tactical display. The Dravix had 200 ships in the system, arranged in a massive formation designed to overwhelm defenders through sheer weight of numbers. The Council's remaining 70 vessels were positioned defensively around the main colony world, waiting for the inevitable attack. They fight like they're playing a game, wine, commented Captain Greg Palmer, who led the fighter wing. Look at those formations. They're beautiful and deadly, but they're predictable. That's because they've never faced real opposition, Danny replied. The Council species don't know how to fight, so the Dravix got used to easy victories. Time to change that. Communications, open a channel to all Council ships. A moment later, Danny's face appeared on screens throughout the Council fleet. This is Admiral Cole of Earth Defense Command. We're here to help. I need all Council vessels to pull back to secondary positions. Let my ships take the front line. Vesa, commanding from her damaged flagship, responded immediately. Admiral Cole, we have already lost hundreds of ships to these enemies. Are you certain you can handle them with only 150 vessels? We're about to find out, Danny said. Trust us and pull back. We'll show you how humans fight. The Council ships retreated and the human fleet moved forward in a formation that confused both the Council and the Dravix observers. Instead of the tight defensive clusters the Council favored, human ships spread out in loose groups that could support each other while maintaining freedom to maneuver. The Dravix fleet advanced, confident as always. They had crushed every force that opposed them. These newcomers would be no different. They were very wrong. The moment the Dravix came into range, the human fleet attacked with coordinated precision. Ships that had seemed randomly scattered suddenly revealed themselves as perfectly positioned strike groups. They hit the Dravix formation from multiple angles simultaneously, targeting command ships and support vessels while avoiding the heavily armored frontline cruisers. Captain Greg Palmer led his fighter squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. Unlike Council fighters, which stayed at safe distances and provided covering fire, human fighters dove straight into close combat. They dodged between larger ships targeting vulnerable points in the Dravix hulls that the enemy had never bothered to protect, because no one had ever gotten that close. "They're in our formation," a Dravix commander broadcast, his voice confused and angry. "How did they get through our shields?" "Because you left gaps," Greg replied on an open channel as his fighter destroyed a Dravix weapons platform. "You're so used to enemies staying at a distance that you forgot to protect against close assault. Bad mistake." The Dravix tried to adapt, turning their massive ships to bring weapons to bear on the human fleet. But human captains had trained for years in aggressive maneuvering. They anticipated enemy movements and were already elsewhere by the time Dravix guns fired. It was like watching professional athletes play against amateurs. On the ECS Defiant, Danny coordinated the battle with calm efficiency. Second group hit their left flank. Third group, prepare to intercept their reinforcements. "And someone get me a visual on that Dravix command ship. I want to put a missile through their bridge." A young officer named Lieutenant Kelly Price worked the weapons console. "Target locked, Admiral." 3 missiles away. The missiles streaked across space, dodging defensive fire through programmed evasive maneuvers that the Dravix point defense systems could not track. 2 missiles were destroyed, but the third penetrated the command ship's shields and detonated against the hull. The explosion tore through multiple decks, crippling the vessel. With their command structure damaged, the Dravix fleet coordination fell apart. Individual ships fought well, but they lost the tactical advantage of unified action. The human fleet pressed the attack, systematically destroying or disabling enemy vessels while taking minimal damage themselves. "They're retreating," Vessa's voice came through on the general channel, filled with disbelief. "The Dravix are actually retreating." It was true. For the first time since the invasion began, the Dravix fleet was pulling back. They had lost 40 ships and dozens more were damaged. The human fleet had lost only 3 vessels, and even those crews had been mostly rescued. Danny did not celebrate. "All ships maintain pursuit but don't overextend. Drive them out of the system, but don't chase them into an ambush. This battle is won, but the war continues." As the Dravix fled, the Council ships slowly moved forward, their crews stunned by what they had witnessed. In less than 2 hours, the humans had achieved what 3 Council fleets could not accomplish in 3 months. They had defeated the Dravix in open combat. After the battle, Danny met with Vessa and the other Council commanders on the orbital station. The station's conference room was filled with alien officers, all staring at Danny with a mixture of awe and confusion. "How did you do it?" Vessa asked. "You had fewer ships than the Dravix. Your vessels are smaller than theirs, yet you defeated them decisively." "We didn't just fight them," Danny explained. "We outthought them. The Dravix are warriors, but they're used to fighting opponents who don't understand combat. They use overwhelming force and brutal efficiency. Those tactics work against peaceful species, but not against humans who have been fighting wars since we lived in caves." Commander Pete Jordan, who had led one of the battle groups, added, "We also used tactics they didn't expect. Close-range fighting, coordinated strikes from multiple angles targeting their command structure. These are all standard human military tactics, but they're completely foreign to the Dravix." A Kelron officer spoke up. "Can you teach us to fight like this? Our crews are brave, but we do not know how to think like warriors." "That's going to be the hard part," Danny admitted. "Fighting isn't just about ships and weapons. It's a mindset. You have to be willing to take risks, to accept losses for strategic gain, to think several moves ahead of your enemy. Those things don't come naturally to species that evolved in peace." Over the next month, Danny set up a joint command center in the Kelros system. Human officers began the difficult task of training Council forces. Commander Pete Jordan worked with Council ship captains, teaching them aggressive maneuvering and coordinated attack patterns. Lieutenant Kelly Price trained weapons officers in target prioritization and fire control. The hardest lessons were not technical but philosophical. Council species struggled with concepts like acceptable losses and strategic retreats. They wanted to save every ship and every crew member, which was admirable but sometimes impossible. War required difficult choices, and making those choices went against the peaceful nature of most Council species. Lieutenant Nina Brooks, a Marine commander, had perhaps the hardest job. She was training Council soldiers in ground combat, preparing them for the possibility that they might have to board enemy ships or defend colonies against Dravix ground forces. Most Council species had never even held a weapon before this war began. "Keep your spacing," Nina instructed a group of Kelron soldiers during a training exercise. "If you bunch up, one grenade can kill all of you. Spread out and use cover. Movement attracts attention, so when you move fast and move with purpose." The Kelron soldiers tried to follow her instructions, but they moved hesitantly, unused to the aggressive posture required for combat. Nina sighed. This would take time, and time was something they did not have much of. The Dravix were not sitting idle. After their defeat at Kelros, they pulled back to study their new opponents. They reviewed recordings of the battle, analyzing human tactics and searching for weaknesses. The Dravix Queen, controlling the hive from her massive command vessel, recognized that these newcomers represented a serious threat. She ordered her fleets to adapt. Dravix ships began practicing new formations designed to counter human close-range tactics. They improved their point defense systems to deal with aggressive fighter squadrons. They studied human communication patterns and began jamming frequencies at critical moments. The Dravix were learning, and that worried Danny more than anything. An enemy that could adapt was far more dangerous than one that simply relied on superior numbers. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kelros, the Dravix launched coordinated attacks on 6 systems simultaneously. The strikes were clearly designed to spread human forces thin and test their response. Captain Amy Fisher led a human task force to defend one of the systems and ran straight into a Dravix ambush. The enemy had hidden half their fleet behind a moon, letting sensors show only the forward elements. When Amy's ships engaged, the hidden vessels emerged and surrounded them. It was a textbook ambush executed perfectly. Amy lost half her fleet before fighting her way out. The survivors limped back to friendly space, carrying the sobering message that the Dravix were no longer easy opponents. They were learning human tactics, and Commander Zara Lynn had spent 3 weeks tracking Dravix movements through Council space. She was an intelligence officer, not a combat soldier, but her work was just as important as any battle. By analyzing attack patterns, ship trajectories, and supply movements, she had pieced together a picture of the enemy's operations. "They're coming from here," Zara said, pointing to a region of space beyond the Council's outer rim territories. "Every Dravix fleet can be traced back to this area. There's a staging ground there, probably a major colony or supply depot." Admiral Danny Cole studied the map. The target was deep in unexplored territory, far from any Council presence. "How certain are you?" 90%, Zara replied. "I've tracked 17 separate fleet movements back to that region. They're coordinating from somewhere in there." "Then that's where we hit them," Danny said. He turned to Captain Troy Bennett, who commanded the scout ships. "Troy, I need detailed reconnaissance of that area. Find me the Dravix staging ground." Troy Bennett was good at his job. His ships were fast and equipped with the best sensors Earth could build. Over the next week, his scouts slipped into enemy territory, dodging Dravix patrols and mapping the region. What they found exceeded expectations. The Dravix had established a massive staging complex around a barren planet. Hundreds of ships orbited the world, being refitted and resupplied. On the surface, enormous facilities processed materials harvested from conquered colonies. It was the heart of the Dravix invasion, and it was bigger than anyone had imagined. "This is it," Danny said when Troy presented the findings. "This is where we end the war. If we destroy this staging ground, we cut off supplies to every Dravix fleet in Council space." Theron, who had remained with the human fleet as a Council liaison, looked worried. "The reconnaissance shows over 300 ships defending that location. Even with our combined forces, we would be outnumbered." "Then we make sure numbers don't matter," Danny replied. "We're not going to fight ship to ship. We're going to strike fast, hit the ground facilities, and cripple their ability to supply their fleets. Once we do that, every Dravix ship in Council space becomes stranded without support." The plan was called Operation Spearhead. Human and volunteer Council forces would jump into the system, fight through the orbital defenses, and deploy ground teams to destroy the surface facilities. It was dangerous and aggressive, exactly the kind of operation that Council species would never have conceived on their own. 3 days later, the strike force assembled. Admiral Cole commanded from the ECS Defiant. With him were 50 human warships and 20 council vessels crewed by the bravest volunteers from a dozen species. It was not a large force compared to the Dravix defenders, but it did not need to be. Speed and surprise would be their weapons. The fleet jumped into the Dravix system in tight formation. Alarms immediately sounded throughout the enemy staging ground as sensors detected the intrusion. Dravix ships scrambled to respond, but the human fleet was already moving. All ships execute attack pattern Delta, Danny ordered. Fighter wings, you're cleared to engage. Ground teams, prepare for deployment. Captain Greg Palmer led his fighter squadron straight into the densest part of the Dravix formation. Behind them, assault shuttles carrying Marines followed in their wake. The fighters created chaos, drawing enemy fire and opening gaps in the defenses. The shuttles exploited those gaps, racing toward the planet's surface. Lieutenant Nina Brooks commanded one of the assault teams. Her shuttle shook as Dravix weapons fire hit nearby, but the pilot kept them on course. Through the viewport, Nina could see the massive processing facilities that covered the planet's surface. Those were her targets. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot shouted over the sound of explosions. Nina checked her weapon and looked at her team. Half were humans, tough Marines who had trained for this mission. The other half were council volunteers, mostly Kelron soldiers who had learned combat from human instructors. They were scared but determined. The shuttle hit the ground hard and the rear ramp dropped. Move, 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 Nina shouted, leading her team out into the alien landscape. Dravix ground forces were waiting. They emerged from the processing facilities armed and ready to defend their territory. The battle that followed was brutal and close range, exactly the kind of fighting that the Dravix had never faced before. Nina's team fought through corridors and across open ground, pushing toward the main power generator. Behind them, more shuttles landed, deploying additional teams. The council volunteers fought alongside humans, learning in real combat what months of training could never fully teach. In orbit, the battle was equally intense. Admiral Cole directed his ships in a dance of coordinated violence, targeting Dravix supply vessels and command ships while avoiding direct confrontation with their heavy cruisers. It was exhausting work, requiring constant attention and split-second decisions. Enemy reinforcements jumping in from the outer system, a sensor operator reported. How many? Danny asked. 50 ships, sir. They'll be in firing range in 10 minutes. Danny did not hesitate. Captain Justin Hart, take your squadron and delay those reinforcements. We need 20 minutes to complete the ground operation. Justin Hart commanded a small group of destroyers, fast ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. Understood, Admiral. We'll buy you the time. Justin's ships raced to intercept the Dravix reinforcements. They were outnumbered 5-1, but they did not need to win. They only needed to delay. For 15 minutes, Justin's squadron fought brilliantly, using every trick and tactic to keep the enemy engaged. But eventually the numbers told. One by one, his ships were destroyed or disabled. Justin's own vessel, already heavily damaged, faced 3 Dravix cruisers. His shields were down, his weapons nearly depleted. He could retreat and maybe survive, or he could buy a few more minutes for the ground teams. All crew to escape pods, Justin ordered. Set the reactor to overload. We're going to ram the lead cruiser. His crew protested, but Justin was firm. They abandoned ship and Justin aimed his dying vessel at the largest enemy ship. The impact and subsequent explosion destroyed both vessels and damaged 2 others, buying precious minutes. On the ground, Nina's team reached the main power generator. It was a massive structure, heavily defended. The fighting to secure it cost them dearly. 3 humans and 2 Kelron soldiers died in the final assault, but they succeeded, and Nina personally placed the charges that would destroy it. All ground teams, this is Brooks. Primary objective secured. Charges set for 5-minute delay. Get to your shuttles now. The evacuation was chaos. Dravix forces tried to stop them, but the assault teams fought their way back to their shuttles. Not everyone made it. Several shuttles were destroyed during takeoff, but most escaped, racing back to orbit as the charges detonated below. The explosion was massive. It triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the primary power generator and 3 secondary facilities. Without power, the orbital construction yards went dark. Supply operations ground to a halt. The Dravix staging ground was crippled. All ships begin withdrawal, Danny ordered. The strike force fought its way out of the system, leaving behind a Dravix operation in ruins. The victory came at a cost. 20 ships were lost, including Justin Hart's destroyer. Over 1,000 crew members and Marines died. But the strategic impact was enormous. Without their staging ground, Dravix fleets throughout Council space began running out of supplies and ammunition. Back at the Joint Command Center, Danny received an unexpected message. The Dravix wanted to negotiate. For the first time since the invasion began, they were willing to talk instead of fight. President Lisa Grant traveled to the negotiation site personally. She met with representatives of the Dravix Queen, including several warriors who had fought against human forces. The meeting was tense, both sides wary and armed. "Why did you invade Council space?" Lisa asked directly. The lead Dravix representative, a scarred warrior, answered honestly. "Our world is dying. Resources depleted, population growing. We expanded to survive. The Council species were weak, easily conquered. We took what we needed." "So you're refugees," Lisa said, surprising everyone in the room. "Desperate refugees who chose violence because you saw no other option." "We are warriors," the Dravix replied. "We do what we must to survive." "There's another way," Lisa said. She displayed a star map showing the Outer Rim territories, regions rich in resources but largely unclaimed. "Earth will sponsor your people for settlement in these areas. We'll help you establish sustainable colonies. In exchange, you end your invasion and release all prisoners." The Dravix representatives were stunned. They had expected demands for surrender or threats of extermination. Instead, humans offered help. "Why would you do this?" one asked. "We killed your people. We are enemies." "Because we understand desperation," Lisa replied. "Earth has faced extinction threats. We know what it's like to fight for survival. We also know that making peace is harder than making war, but it's the only way to truly end conflict." The negotiations took weeks, but eventually, an agreement was reached. The Dravix would withdraw from conquered territories and release all prisoners. In exchange, they would receive settlement rights in the Outer Rim and assistance from Earth in establishing sustainable colonies.